All
Going
right,
live.
we're going live.
Yeah, I think we're live now.
Oh, shit,
So,
I'm dizzy as hell.
oops.
Okay. Yeah. So before we start, what we do in our way is that before we do anything important, before we start our day, usually I start my day this way 99% of the time. We do a Thanksgiving. And what that is an acknowledgement of all the things on Mother Earth. First of all, that Mother Earth has an agreement with the universe to steer herself around in the universe, that she will protect what's on and in her belly. And the people all agreed, or the planets all agreed to that. So that's how Mother Earth steers around the solar system. We give thanks for that. Then we look down at the Mother Earth herself and we see what she needs. And Mother Earth allows the water to live on her because the water can nourish her and keep her soft and stop her from going hard and cracking up. And she asked the water to do that for her, and the water spread itself all over so that would happen. And Mother Earth said to her that she would give her things that she needed to do for what came behind her. So Mother Earth did her job for what came behind her the first time with the waters, and we all agreed to that. And we give thanks for that. And then we look to the waters and all of the water world and the fish world and all those things, and we acknowledge that they all live in that waterway, and all those things help us. We can take sustenance from those things. And then we look to the four-legged, and first we look to the plant world and to the big tree world and all of them. They give all of us shelter. They give us warmth. They give us many things. They provide us with foods. They provide us with medicines, and we give thanks that they continue to do that to this day.
I believe you just cut out, Robert.
Is that me here?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay. Then we give thanks to the four-leggeds and the. Oh shit! I'm burning some seeds. And when we acknowledge that they give us sustenance, they give us food, they give us warmth, they give us comfort, they become our friends. They do all these things for us, and they teach us. They teach us how to live and how to be in Mother Earth, and we give thanks for that. Then we look to the two-leggeds, and we say that they have a job to be the caretakers. And they have to take care of all those things that we have sustenance for the next 7 generations, and they've given us what we need. And then we give thanks for that there's people still here that know what they have to do for Mother Earth to make sure she survives next 7 generations. And then Mother Earth herself and the planet system says, we will help you. And they give us the sun and the moon and the stars. Father Moon, Father Sky, Grandmother Moon, and we give thanks for those things. And then we give thanks for the star world. And we acknowledge that they're going to give us the rowdy winters, the rains, and the thunders, and all those things to help us to be caretakers of all of this. And that's where we get new waters, and we get all those things from the planets themselves above us. And we learn from all of that we're land-based, sky-taught people. And in those sky teachings, we learn to be respectful to Mother Earth. And we have those that are around us that teach us about that, and we give thanks for them. And that's the ones that are here today that are able to teach us about the next 7 generations and about our spine teachings. And we give thanks for all that stuff. And then if I forgot anything or if I've left anything out because I'm doing it fast and I'm doing it in English, put your own renditions in there. Just remember what you need to survive is everything that came before you, and they don't need you. We need the plant world. We need the water world. All of those things are our survival, and they come before us. They are more important than us. They were here first. They should be protected first. So that's it for that.
Oh, thank you, Robert. Thanks for sharing that. So thanks for joining. I guess this is our first kind of pilot episode for a show we've been talking about called Unlearn the Lie. And
.com.
and yeah, and so we thought that Canada Day was a good day to launch a show like that. And yeah, and this episode, the pilot episode, is called "Why Like I Don't Participate in Canada Day," which are your words. And
Yeah.
I would love to hear about your thoughts about that and about Canada Day. And I like your orange shirt. And I just want to say I don't have an orange shirt, but I wear my friend's artwork, Nagize, and that's his.
Just say what I say. My underwear are the right color.
Yeah, and
And this Robert is sitting here with us. So
hi,
you just so
Robert.
you acknowledge that Robert is here.
Nice to meet
And
you, Robert.
he's just enjoying his fire. He lit the fire. So
Amazing.
he's the fire keeper.
Okay, great. Thank you for doing
Yeah.
that. Yeah, and I guess, well, Canada Day, even for Canadians like myself, is like becoming more and more of a challenging day to celebrate or to understand. And some people for longer than others, but specifically in the last couple of years, in the last years, everything, more and more information comes forward, and hence the orange shirts and the remembrance. And I think we're starting to learn more about the truth of our history, and that's what you're going to help us understand in this episode, in this series. But yeah, why don't you talk about why you don't participate in Canada Day?
I can do that. I do my things on Canada Day. I don't do Canada on Canada Day. I don't go into Canadian stores. I don't participate in any of their ceremonies or their. If they ask me to do something on that day to make it a celebration of theirs, I say no. There is Indigenous people today that are out there and they're doing ceremonies, and God bless them. It's a good thing they're doing. But for me, I remember Solidarity Day, and I think anyone over 50 would remember Solidarity Day. Those that are 50 would just be young teenagers when they started to take it from us. And that was June 21st, Solidarity Day. On that day, we did not participate in Canada. We did not go to work. And in every community in the country at 12 o'clock noon their time, they burned tobacco. So in this country, from 10:30 in the morning till 7 at night or 5 at night, there was tobacco burning in all the communities and in all the provinces. And that tobacco burning was becoming more and more recognized. Why are you people doing that was at its beginning. What's this about? And people would walk around and find out a little more because we did it in public places. We'd do it in parks. We intentionally did it as a teaching all through the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and in the 90s it got big. And it grew really big, and the Canada saw how big it was growing. It was a movement, and they took that day and they started to call it Indigenous Day, and they said that they were doing that to honor us and to honor the old the things that had happened, but they were still hidden. They stole our day. They made it into a celebration, and they had Indians celebrating. And that day is about loss. That day we mourned our loss from the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, and they took our children. And they took our children in mass during the Pierre Trudeau government. He took thousands and thousands and thousands per year. Chrétien and the Governor General and Solicitor General ran programs to take our children to other places and adopt them out. I have no evidence that they had charged fees for those things, but I do have my one cousin's adopted mother saying that she could find a canceled check for me to the Solicitor General of Canada for $20,000. So they pre-sold our children. They went to her, and then 3 months later they brought him. So that's a pre-sold sale of a child is what Canada participated in under the Pierre Trudeau government. Then Pierre Trudeau's son, Ancessis, burned documents of Pierre Trudeau's from the 1980s. And I don't know what he burned. Nobody does. I won't say burned, I'll say destroyed. That's what it says, destroyed. I'm sorry. But they took those documents out of commission. And he's the one that he told the churches in the 1980s, and this is public knowledge if you check it on your internet sites. He took the responsibility of all of the residential schools into the government, took it away from the churches, and took control of it. And that's when the residential schools had their biggest influx of people. And one of their things that they did was the control of the children, and that's when a lot of atrocities happened in our lifetime that we all know about. People were taken and never returned, and the questions get asked, there's how many bodies are up now and how many bodies have been recovered. And the answer to that at this point is 10,378. And yes, they've got 2,800 now that they actually did DNA and they know who they are and they've posted those names. Our suicide rates are up in our communities. So I don't participate in Canada because Canada should hang their head in shame, especially when they try to steal our day when we try to stand solid as a people and mourn those people they took. They imprisoned our people in the 90s when they took it. They started calling it Indigenous. They were 92% of the prison population was Indigenous. Today it's 52%, and they use a 5% rule. They say 5% of the people were Indigenous, but are Indigenous in this country. But that's if you count the Métis, which is a creation of the Canadian government. Without the Canadian government, the Métis are not a creation, and they would put them under the Indian Act. As non-status Indians, Métis, and Indians were in Inuit or in the Indian Act. So they put them in there, but at the same time, when they were taking land from the Cree along the Assiniboine and the Bull River, in Saskatchewan and in Manitoba. The Métis cried, "We're not Indians," and they respected that for them and said, "Okay, well, you guys can have the land that we're taking from the Cree," and they accepted that landmass, 518,000 hectares. I think 560. I don't quote me on the side, but it's 500 and something. I think it's 518. And they took that landmass and said, "We're not Indians." And then Pierre Trudeau had a dilemma on his hands. He had this group of people who were not Indians, who were claiming Indianness and claiming not Indian at the same time. And that's how they were formed. They became a people by not being Indians. And then they had an Indian Act that made them Indians again. And they now want to be Indians again after they took all that land off the Cree that doesn't belong to them, and they now live on that, and they call that Métis land, and it's one of the biggest land masses of Indians in the country, and they make up 40% of the population. So when I say 5% of the people in prison are Indigenous, I'm not sure how many are Métis. And I would say when I worked in the prison, more than half of my inmates were Métis, and I had to work with them because they fall under the Indian Act. So 52%, but more than that, the population of us changes down to about 3% of the population, with 40% of the population is Métis of the Indian population. So they participate in all the celebrations. And the Métis today, they're going to host on July 24th. They're hosting an public apology from the Pope, and most of them never went to residential school. So these things make me not want anything to do with Canada. It's not a proud place to be if you understand the history and the current history that we lived in our lifetimes. In 1997, the last school was closed in the provinces, but they didn't close all of them until close to the 2000s, and some of them in the 2000s in the Inuit communities. So it happened in most of our lifetimes. If you're 30, it happened in your lifetime.
Right.
So that's the facts. So I don't participate in Canada on June the 21st. And now this is our response now, July 1st. We are saying, make that Orange Shirt Day. We're doing exactly what they did to our June 21st. And we're getting great response for Orange Shirt Day. And we're going to take that day from them. We know how to take things from them. We took in the 70s, we took the gasoline industry off of them. In the 90s, we took the cigarette industry off of them in this province and our community. And then in the 2000s, We took the marijuana industry. We own half the marijuana dispensaries in Canada, the Indigenous nations. So we know how to do it when we want to do it. And we're going to make this shirt, this meat on as Orange Shirt Day. And I'll participate in Orange Shirt Day, but I won't participate in Canada.
So, Robert, thank you for all of that. Can you tell me a little bit about where you are located and about your community, and a little bit about that? And I guess before that, you've explained to me in the past that there's so many communities in Canada. While Canada often presents things kind of as a homogenized idea of Indigenous or First Nations communities, but in fact there's there's many different communities, and then there's different ways that each community has. Can you explain a little bit about that and where you are from?
Okay. For me, I live in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory, and it's a territory. It is situated on the Bay of Quinte, and we are, by treaty, 92,600 acres, but today we sit on 15,000 acres, which are undisputed. The rest of it Canada took from us in 1824 and gave away. And then again in 1924 took a large landmass off of us. So our original territory has shrunk, but I'm in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory, and it's a sovereign territory. It is under treaty. We have an agreement with the Queen of England, the monarchy, as a sovereign nation. And those treaties, we have 10 treaties that recognize our sovereign nation. And we have many, 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 many letters back and forth to the queens and the kings over the years, calling us my brothers, King William, King George, my brothers and sisters, never calling us our subjects, which they do when they address letters to their subjects, but they called us as brothers and sisters, eye to eye, and they recognized our sovereignty even in their letter writing. Today, they challenge it whenever they can. They try to impose their might and their will on us, and they do that with way of band office. There's 560 Native nations inside of Canada with different dialects and different languages in 1,100 or 1,400 communities. That's how many people are in Canada, and First Nations are in Canada. And all of the communities may or may not be signed on as Canadian Indians. The province of British Columbia has ceded nothing, has never agreed to anything with Canada. They don't even have a treaty with the Crown or any other people. They are complete sovereign, the entire province. So you can't count their 138 communities in that, because they're different. They're even they don't even exist in Canada's realm, and they have Canada. Their biggest militia is there. They have 10,600 RCMP and land not belonging to them. Their largest, second largest one is the OPP here in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. Now, in this watershed, in our watershed under treaty, the Nanfan Treaty, there's 10,000 OPP officers, lands that are not theirs. And people don't know these things. The Nanfan Treaty is owned by the Mississauga Nation. We purchased land off them in the 1700s. 1793, we purchased this parcel of land that I sit on, and we purchased what is known as the Haldeman Deed, the Haldeman Pledge, the Haldeman Proclamation. We purchased that landmass, and that is 10 miles either side, 10 kilometers either side of the Grand River, all the way up from its beginning to its end. That includes Guelph, that includes Fergus, that includes all those little towns, Orangeville. It goes all the way down into Waterloo, Kitchener, Stony Creek, Hamilton, goes into Fort Erie. And 10 kilometers either side of that, 6 miles either side of that, is owned by us by treaty, and it was signed treaty. So that is land not theirs, and that's where the biggest police forces in the country sit, and land not theirs.
I can't see
still,
Robert.
Yeah, they're still trying to get us there. So when I say we live in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory, I'm talking about a sovereign nation under treaty with a different crown. And Canada sits as the crown's representatives on our lands. and they're still trying to usurp our governments. So I
So,
don't know if I'm on track with that.
I was going to say one thing. Okay, so I feel like, I've met with you and talked with you a lot of times. So, and it's taken me, I think it takes a long time to unlearn things or to relearn things. And even just the fact that there were many, many different communities was, I mean, not that I didn't know that, but I don't think I understood how many. And the fact that you have your own passport on your territory was really shocking to me. I didn't know that you were completely separate nationality. The way that it's spoken about in Canada is that, the Indigenous people kind of belong to Canada or have been integrated into Canada or under Canadian rule. And then it's sort of shown that there are banding councils that govern, but I didn't see them as fully separate nations. So maybe you can explain about the fact that you have a passport, and then about how your territory is unique from other territories in that regard.
I'm a passport carrying, red card holding citizen of another nation. Anybody that was not born in Canada, who immigrates to Canada, pledges allegiance to the Canadian Constitution and the country. And they pledge allegiance to obey that and to live accordingly onto that Constitution. And I pledged allegiance to my country. I reinstated, they call it, because I was born and I lived in a different area, and now I grew up, and when I got my passport, I reinstated and I pledged allegiance to the Constitution of the Haudenosaunee, which is the Six Nations: Mohawk, Oneida, Cayuga, Onondaga, Seneca, Tuscarora, and Cayuga. Did I say that Cayuga twice? That make that seven? But that's the Six Nations Confederacy. I have a Six Nations Confederacy passport, but Haudenosaunee is what we're called. They mistake us all the time as the Iroquois. We are the original Six Nations of the Iroquois. And the Iroquois are people that passed the peace. But I hold a passport from that confederacy of the Six Nations, a Haudenosaunee passport. When I travel into the USA, I don't let them stamp my passport because I have not left my country. It drives them crazy at the border. They say, well, how will we know you're there? And I say, well, write it down. I'm there. But do not stamp my passport. I have not left my country. And I do not allow them to stamp it. They call out their supervisors. And it's a longer journey for me. I get harassed all the time, but I'm a passport carrying citizen of another nation who has pledged his allegiance to that Constitution. And I have nothing to do with Canada. I've let all my Canadian identification and documents expire. None of them that I have that are active, not one. They're all expired. I have nothing. I sent a letter to the Queen telling her to remove me from anything identifying me as a Canadian. I sent it to the Governor General. I CC'd the Queen by mail and sent it to London, to her Buckingham Palace in London, and to her family. I sent it to the royal family and to her, recognizing me as a sovereign. I sent a letter recently to the United Nations asking for the tyrannical government to come and have them remove a tyrannical government from my soil. The band offices are part of the Canadian government. They are the Canadian government chiefs. If you are elected, you're not ours. We do not elect. We have life chiefs. They're born and they're picked by clan mothers and women in my community, in our way. I can't talk about other nations' ways, but in our way, in the Six Nations, they're life chiefs. They're instilled by clan mothers, and only the Women's Council can take them down, dehorn them. But even then, they still have a voice to be considered. If we're troubled and we need to listen to somebody that's got knowledge, we still go there. I don't know what's happened there. The process of elected systems, that pretty much tells you that's the chief and council is the Canadian government's treasonous people. They hire our people. So 10% of the population is hired by band officers, and the Canadian government systems in our territory, like the wellness center, and they're good things. They're good things. Don't get me wrong. The band office, the administration office, housing, rental properties, and they take care of all that, and they clean up all the grounds, and the garbage people, and they pick up the garbage. All those are good things that have to be done, and they're hired by the band office, and that's a Canadian government employees. Now that makes up about 10% of our people, and that's the national average of people that participate in Canadian elections in Canada. It's usually around 8, but recently it's been 10 in our community.
I'm going to have to back you up a tiny bit because, okay, so now we're going into band and council. And so, like, from a Canadian's perspective, we hear about the chiefs or like that the chiefs from different communities, and we understand that the chiefs of the band and council are representatives of the community and understand that our understanding is that they're a full representative, that the community has elected them, and that
I'm getting there.
Yeah, when the government is working with the band and council, that this is always a good thing for the community, and that the community is supportive of this, and that this is a good thing. But from talking with you and seeing things from inside, it looks like, at least in your community, that the band and council has very low levels of support, or that there's not a lot of participation from the community in supporting with elections, and that there's a lot more to that story and that situation than most Canadians would be aware of. Did you want to speak about that?
Yeah, I was getting there. So yeah, the band council is not ours. It hires about 10% of our community, and during the chief and council elections, when they say the elected chief, they're talking about 10% of the population, 90% of the people across the country. I'm talking not just in my community now. Across the country, the average rate is 10%, 8 to 10% of the people, and it's never been more, ever. So 90% of our people have always said that's not ours in their own way by not participating. That's how we say that's not ours. We're not participating in it. We don't have to vote in it. We don't have a voice in it. And they want us to come to council to tell them we're not participating. They want us to come to their system to tell them we're not participating in their system. It's kind of silly. And they say, no, well, if you got a problem with chief, then you go to the chief. But we have a problem with their system, and we're not going to participate in it to validate it. We're not going to do that. That invalidates our cause when we validate their band offices. If you go through any Native community today, I don't know about any of the Six Nation communities today, you won't find a Canadian flag flying anywhere. Not anywhere will you find a Canadian flag flying. We don't support it. Today, you drive through my community, you'll see these everywhere, hanging on hangers off mailboxes, hanging on trees, hanging on the street. Everywhere you see them, two-row wampum belts. And I don't know if anyone knows about the two-row wampum. It's the agreement with which every one of you sit on our soil. Every one of you. The two-row wampum is the only agreement that we have lived under with the Crown and with the Crown's people on our soil. And we have never given anything but the two-row wampum. It's the agreement that we all live under. So for us to go to their band council to try and invalidate it, to try and remove it, is what they want us to do, is go and have our people vote in it and vote our own people in. That invalidates us. We have a system already in place that for the last 125 years has been ignored in favor of the band councils. That happened in 1899. In 1899, every community in Canada will tell you the same story happened to them on the same day. The chiefs, the elected, the band council chiefs came into play in that time. But at that time, we had our traditional governments, and all the traditional government chiefs were arrested in 1899 on the same day by the RCMP, put in prison. Their sentence was, and every one of them, and I told the judges to check this because I'm in a legal challenge with judges right now over this very thing. Their sentence was, until our governments are running effectively in your communities. And at that time, there was Christians. They wore a big medallion of Mandela on their chest, which identified them as Christians. And they gave those jobs and those positions to those people, and they pledged allegiance to the Canadians. That's what they did. They pledged allegiance actually to Britain at that time. And they became the band counselors. They became known as the Long Hair Party. Now, if you check our community, the Long Hair Party still exists. And that's the party with which our Donald Miracle, the elected council chief, sits with. He's the Long Hair Party. That's the party that the arresting officers gave our lands to govern. And govern means to control minds. And then that government to this day has sat in our community for 125 years. We have no way to remove it, even though only 10% of our people participate in it. They still will not remove it. It's like the Ontario government in the last election, only 11% of your people participated. It's the smallest percentage of people since they became a country. But they say that the progressive conservatives won the election with the 11%. That's how Canada looks at things. They don't look at non-participants as having a voice and saying something to them. And the non-participants of the Mohawk people are saying something to them. We are saying in a loud voice, this is not ours. We do not participate. And we have told them at every level. We've been in Switzerland and told them in Switzerland that this is not ours. We have shown them the two-row wampum. In 1995, I think you're going to put an attachment here for people. In 1995, there was a Royal Commission on the Gashwenta, Keshwenta. That's called the Gashwenta. That's the two-row wampum. That's the agreement with which you all sit here. That's about you sitting in your land, me sitting in my land, having a canton of people. You run your government your way, and we'll run our government our way. But when it comes to the land, we all got to meet together, and we got to decide what's going to happen. And it has to be 100% of the people that say yes before we make any decisions. Because it's not our position to say we want to vote by 51%. We never win anything by 51%. If 100% of our people aren't in, we're not in. That's how we work.
So, so the banded council, even if you refuse to participate because you don't want to be a part of the system. However, they're still present in your community and they still impact the daily goings on in your community.
Yeah, let me tell you about my community and them being present. They're not welcome. They don't come to the community. They don't participate in anything without a military presence of police watching their backs. They're not wanted. We posted a video called "You're on Indian Land," of National Film Board video on YouTube, I think it is. And I think it's in the 17-minute mark where they asked the elected chief, the OPP asked the elected chief to talk to the people. And he says, not without a firearm will I go there. That's the elected council. That's how we think of them. We don't want them on our lands. They're treasonous people. What do you do with treasonous people who continually do treasonous acts, who continually belittle us and make us smaller and smaller? And now they've signed the Municipalities Act. All the elected chiefs have signed what they call the Municipalities Act, which it's going to take away our land rights. That's what that is going to do in the next couple of years. We're now paying taxes on cigarettes. We pay $3 a case on tax on cigarettes from the Vandals. All these things are from that chief. He brings Canada's wishes to us, not our wishes to Canada. That's how they work. They are Canadian government employees, 35-year out program on a Canadian pension. That makes them Canadian government. That's how they get paid. And at the end of it all, they get a pension from Canada, which makes them what? Canadian employees or our chiefs? I think Canadian employees. We don't want them. They aren't present. Our Donald Miracle always has a black SUV surrounding his house when he's home. He's scared. He spent many years thinking people were going to kill him from the waterway.
When you say our Donald Miracle, could you explain?
No, not our, like Reginald Donald.
You've said that before. Our Donald Miracle. So who is our Donald Miracle, and what is his role there, and where does he live if he's not there? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We don't know where he lives. He's there part-time. Most of them live in the community. Most of the chiefs live in their community. But it's not a very well-liked place, and they're always being challenged, and at different levels. Some of the, you got to understand that many of the communities are Canadian Indians. And what happened with us is we got put into a homogenous group, and we're not Canadian Indians. We sit on this soil as sovereigns. We didn't sign with the 11 treaties. We are already here. We already had treaties with the Crown, and we've never, ever, ever signed anything with Canada.
Okay, so
that's what people need to understand. There's 11 numbered treaties with people that signed treaties with Canada and became Canadian Indians. That's not us.
So our Donald Miracle is your band chief. Is that correct?
Our Donald Miracle is the elected chief for the Canadian government system.
And he has been there for quite some time. Is that
30 years. I'm going to say 33 years.
And he, you're saying that he doesn't live there, but then he does.
No. He has a home there. He has a home there.
Okay.
He doesn't stay in it without a guard around him.
Okay.
I'm not saying he doesn't live there. I'll never say that. He does have a home there.
Okay.
But he goes somewhere else all the time. He's not home. He's just not home.
Right. Right. I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
And he's been your elected official for 30 years, but you're
No, let me correct you. He's never going to be my elected official. He's the Canadian government's elected official for the 10% of the people that work for the Canadian government in the band council positions.
Right.
Never say he's mine.
I see. Yes, but you're saying, okay. He is the elected known band council chief for that territory, but very few people participate. And I think I was there for an election a while ago, and the numbers are super low. I think you said roughly 10%. Is that right?
I'll tell you, we are 12,000, where our band membership is 12,000. 963 people participated in the election.
Right.
All right, so you do the math. Like 9%.
And how does the band and council, their operations within the government, what activities do they there's funds that go to the band and council to be distributed.
Many different types of funds. So one of the big ones is Rama. Everyone knows Rama, the casino. Mm-hmm. We promised we would not build a casino as long as we got dividends from that. So they said yes, and those dividends now go to the chief and council. $30,000 a year per person. Now at Rama, they just give a check to each of their people, $30,000 a year, and they take that check and do whatever they want with it. So we know that exists. But at our community, the chief says he's putting it back into the community, and we've never seen a penny from Rama. And if we try to build a casino, which we have tried in the past, they attack us and they arrest us and they put us into the court system as criminals. When we try to make our own band office, because he's not our chief making those agreements. If you come to our chief and talk to our system, like the two-row wampum says, we might be able to come to some type of conclusion that helps us. But they ignore our voice for the last 125 years. That's a big one to Rama, okay? So he gets $30,000 a year for each band member, and we're 12,000. So that's what, 3.6 million, 36 million, whatever it works out to, $36 million that he gets a year into a fund for the band office to dispense. Another one is they get housing allowances to build and maintain housing, and roads allowance and all these things. Now, with all these things, they have incurred a debt. Like all Canadian entities, like anything the Canadian government runs, they're running in a debt. So they're running in the red. And this debt it's like $12 million right now that our band owes the Canadian government. Now, how does that work? People that aren't part of their system incur a debt of $12 million over time when $36 million a year comes to them from one deal. just the one deal?
Right.
That's a good question to be asked by, I don't know how to get that a question asked.
And
Um,
what about you guys only recently, again, like one of the key things that keep coming up in the media, I suppose, that gets some attention, is about drinking water in different
I was
communities.
just getting there. I was going to say we get money for water. Since now they have said publicly in the last 6 months that some communities in the remote north have boiled water. And I'm going to tell you that's the biggest lie they ever told you. I have been boiling water in this community since 1993. We've been on boiled water here. We have no fresh water in our community. All of us boil it if we want to drink it. 1993 is when we start, maybe even 1992. But I know since 1993 myself, I've been boiling the water,
Now,
and I continue.
I thought that in the last couple of months there was some kind of development in your
There
community.
was,
Yeah.
there was $30 million was given to us to put us clean water. And they put in, what do you call them things on the side of the road that the firemen use? Fire hydrants. They ran the entire streets, the main streets, and all into the subdivisions. They all have these fire hydrants. So there's water right at right at the end of our roads, right at the end of our property lines. There's these big water lines running fresh water right by us because they're not hooked up to our homes. They're just hooked up to the next fire hydrant. And all the fire hydrants are hooked up with fresh water. And that's potable drinking water that the firemen are going to use if there's a fire onto a house.
Oh my
Um,
God.
but we don't have it. We still are on boiled water because we can't afford to bring that in. They say that they're going to bring it in for us, and they're waiting for funding to bring it in because they can't just go to a pile of money and bring it out because that's not for that. This money's not this slated for that. We need to go to the government and we need to find out if we can spend it on this. And that's how it works. That's how it works.
So,
They can't make a decision on their own. They have no way to make unilateral choices that benefit the community. They have to go to the Canadian government and say, we want to spend this. So they're telling us that eventually they're going to run the water into each of the homes. But as of yet, they have not done so. So
right.
yes, we have fresh water in our community. I wish we could drink it.
That and so when they did that, and they made they brought the fire hydrant water, did that come out in the media, or like were you told like, hey, you've got fresh water now? Was it like I seem to remember that there was some kind of media report or something saying that you guys have received fresh
Fresh water, yes. There was a media. It came out in the media because that's when they were talking about the North. And we were talking about not having it in our homes yet. And they came out in the media and said that soon they would have it in our homes. Now, Mark Miller was sitting with us when we stopped the trains. We took permission away from the Canadian people to run their trains through our territory, and it was illegally stopped the trains. We didn't illegally stop the trains. We didn't put anything on the track except a table for Mark Miller to show him the two-row wampum. By his asking, put it here so it's ceremonial, he says. And then they used that picture to say we stopped tracks by blocking the train. But you're not allowed to put things on the tracks. That's the only thing we did that was illegal. And we did it at the request of Mark Miller.
Mark
It's
Miller.
our country. We take away permission to travel in our country. We can take away permission for the airplanes to go overhead. And we did until last year when our Donald Miracle gave the Air Force permission to fly over our community for testing, for new recruits to do their what do you call it, training. That's now happening in our community. As it was a no-fly zone for 30 years, 25 years was a no-fly zone. After the helicopter went down and got shot down in Syracuse by the Onondaga people when they flew over top of the Onondaga Nation. So we have given Canada, we have put Canada on notice not to fly over our area. Our Donald Miracle has rescinded that and given them permission. We have given them 3 warnings not to fly over our area, or we will take it as an act of war. And they stopped when they got the letter saying we will see that as an act of war. They stopped flying over our area. Then last year, our Donald Merkel gave them permission again, and they're flying surveillance with the flat bottoms to see where our crops are growing, because they're going to make some law about that soon, I can tell you. They've already said any crop grown in the ground is an illegal crop. That's already an Ontario law. They have to grow
Yeah,
them
I
up
you mentioned
ground.
that to me. I hadn't seen the writing about that. But for people who are watching who don't know who Mark Miller is, and some people don't know a lot of, like, even you're talking about when the CN rail, the trains were stopped.
Yeah,
That was just before the pandemic.
right.
In
That impacted the nation, but then it was overrode by the pandemic. It just stopped us from stopping the train because everybody was stopped from doing anything and put inside their homes.
right, right.
So yeah, so they took away that impact. Mark Miller is the Indigenous Affairs, one of the Indigenous Affairs Ministers of Canada. There's two of them. One's they broke Indian Affairs up into departments, and now there's a department for Indigenous relations and Indigenous relations in the North, and I don't know the name of it anymore. It used to be called Diana, Department of Indian and Northern Affairs, and then it switched its name now to this guy has this title and this guy. Mark Miller is the Indigenous Affairs Minister who came to our community when we took away permission to take your trains through our community, through our country. Let's make it that way so people understand. We made our country not Canadian because when January 9th, 2020, Canada was given a United Nations declaration to stop and cease and desist the pipeline in Wet'suwet'en territory and to deal with the traditional governments. Canada quadrupled their workforce at that time, and we stopped the train. That's what happened. That's why, because we were supporting the Wet'suwet'en until they were stopped being brutal to them. We were not going to let the train come. So Prime Minister Trudeau flew to the Queen to see what he could do, and guess what he came back with? COVID. And him and his family had COVID, and they had to shut us down. And that was COVID scare number one right there. People don't know that. That's how they stopped us from stopping the trains. They brought COVID back.
Mm.
By the way, my wife has COVID. You can look at him coming back. It was a live feed. You can go back into the news feeds and we'll look at it. By the way, my wife has a big deadly thing called COVID, and it's very dangerous, and we have to lock up for 14 days. That was what he said. Patient number one in our soil.
So just going back to, we were talking a few minutes ago about, well, first I'd like to see a little bit about you, because you have a lot of information. It's probably like a lot for people who are tuning in. But earlier you said that you gave up your any claim to being Canadian, and you wrote to the Queen. Did you hear back from her, firstly? And the second question I have about that is that you did, prior to that, I believe you were working with the Canadian, in the Canadian system, and you worked with Corrections Canada for a long time, and were responsible for creating and delivering programs there for Indigenous inmates. And you were...
I started Aboriginal Corrections. Me and four other people from my community started Aboriginal Corrections in Canada. And then we wrote the programs for Aboriginal people. We wrote the anger management programs first, and we delivered them. And then we wrote the substance abuse programs, and we delivered them. And then we taught them to the community parole officers, and we taught them to their parole officers. And eventually, we were teaching in schoolrooms at the staff college of Canada, Ontario Staff College in Kingston. I was a teacher there for 4 years, teaching our programs to them. And the differences and why they were valid and stuff like that. So yeah, I worked for 17 years in corrections or in the government of Canada, 7 of them in the post office and the rest in Corrections Canada. I developed many programs. I validated Indigenous people inside the prison to have their own have their own healing. I validated all of that for us. I won 2 Solicitor General's awards for that, Excellence in Service awards, and um, only one person in Canada a year wins those awards, and I won it twice in the time I was there. I didn't win it. I didn't apply for it. I didn't try for it. I just did my job.
Yeah. And so
and they
then,
awarded me.
wow. And then you rescinded your, was that before or after you decided to let go of your connection to Canada and then affirm or pledge to your own constitution? When did that happen?
My pledge to my constitution, and I could look at my red card, but it was in midwinter ceremony 1995 that I did that. So it would have been in January 1995. And I was still working in Canada Corrections at the time that I did that.
And what does that mean? Like, I mean, we were talking earlier and you mentioned, that you have a passport and that, many people in other communities would have a passport from Canada. What does it like? How did your community set out to be able to have your own passport system? And when you did give up your connection to Canada, like what were you giving up and what was that process like?
My community doesn't have a system. It isn't about the community. My nation has a system for passports, not my community.
Right.
Yeah, and those passports are awarded not in my community, but in Onondaga in Syracuse, New York, at our Onondaga Nation Council fire. I'm just trying to get my passport out here for you. Don't know where I put it. I was showing it earlier today. There it is. So the Onondaga Nation is our central fire, and it's where our passports are monitored from. And at that, in 1995, you didn't get the passport when I pledged allegiance. You had to go get it out on your own afterwards, and I just never went to get it. But in 1995, I pledged allegiance to the Constitution of the Haudenosaunee, to the rules of the two-row wampum, and I pledged allegiance to them, and I studied them, and I loved them, and I said, "This is a nation." And if you study them, the two-row wampum, you will understand what I pledged allegiance to. I pledged allegiance to love, honor, peace. There's my passport.
Right.
And there's 377 pages that teach you how love, honor, and peace can come to your nation. That's what I pledged allegiance to. And I did that in 1995. This is my second passport. So I got a passport in 1998, and then this one, or 2008, and then this one. So I never needed one before. When I travel, I don't allow anyone to stamp my passport in Canada and the USA. That's me. It identifies my clan. It says I'm the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. It's proper paper. It's got a seal on it. It's a real proper document. And here's the back page. It identifies what nation I'm with, and right there.
Wow. And so I'm glad you brought up the two-row wampum, because I think that's really important. So you pledged allegiance to your constitution, which is that the two-row wampum would be the foundation for that. And how old is that? And can you tell us a bit?
That is older than any British subjects on our soil. That's when they came here in 1677. They agreed to live to it. And they were allowed on our soil as long as they lived to it. My great grandfather in 1710 went to meet Queen Anne in England, and his title is "He Will Cause Your Lips to Move," is the title that he carries as the Wolf Clan Chief. And what that means is he will cause your lips to talk about the great peace. And when you do, he will point you to the two-row wampum agreement. And you will learn the two-row wampum as your lips move, and he teaches you. And when you have learned it, you can come on our soil. That is the agreement with which they're here. The two-row wampum is we have documents going back to the 11th century, 1100s in the Onondaga community. I don't know how old it is, but that's how long ago we documented it. All
Right.
right. So Vikings say that they came to it, and that was in the 900s, and they say they say that they came and entered into agreements of two-row and peace. The two-row wampum is agreements of peace and allowing you to live as your own people. So when I went in front of the judge, and I'm going on jurisdiction, I'm not pleading in their courts, and they've given me charges, and I said that I would not do this, and he said, "Are you not recognizing me?" I said, "Absolutely not." I said, "You're Chief Justice Bond of the Superior Court of Justice, and that man there is Mr. Paul Leeski, the federal Crown Prosecutor for Canada. That lady there is the lady, I'm sorry, I don't know her name, but she is the court's clerk here at 15 Bridge Street in Belleville, Ontario. And that courtroom, you hold family court, traffic court, municipal court, provincial court, and federal court. I'm in the federal courtroom and building in room number 401. And yes, I recognize your canton and your allowing it and your allowance to be here because you're here and you're my friend. Problem is you're not recognizing our alliance to you." That's what I said to him.
You know
and
what?
they asked for 6 months to research.
Robert, I don't like to interrupt you, and I know that you don't. You would. I love what you're sharing with us. But so, do you want to speak about the fact that you have a court case right now? Because I don't know that. Like most people don't know that.
I'm throwing everything in together, I think, to talk about the initial topic. I will get back to it. But the court case shows you that they are aware that they're here by the two-row wampum. And I told them, by that wampum, you're allowed to be on our soil. You agree to it and you're my friend. And anything you ask me as a friend, you pull on that string and I will come. And so far, you pulled on that string and asked me to come to your court, and I'm here. I'm here, but I will not plead in your court because I am the citizen of another nation. And I am exempt from your court system through the two-row wampum agreement with which you sit on my soil. And they asked for 6 months to research it, and I gave that to them as a friend, as their friend of the two-row. And then they came back last month and they asked for permission from me to have another month. And I said, as your friend under the two-row wampum agreement with which you sit here, I will give you all the time you need. And a month is fine with me. You are my friend under the two-row. So as the friends, and when they ask you for something, you give it to them if you can, if it doesn't disturb your peace. And it's not disturbing my peace to go there and teach them how they sit on my soil. It's my responsibility. I have a responsibility to spread the great peace. It's a responsibility. It's not I might or might not do it. It's a responsibility. So I'm doing what I'm responsible to do under my agreement, under my pledge of allegiance to my country.
So the Great Law of Peace, which is what the two-row wampum belt is,
Discusses.
it's a treaty for that that set of responsibilities, is what you've told me. You've called it.
So the treaties, the Silver Covenant chain is the little 3 links. And originally it was 3 links of a chain that we put in their pocket to show that they understood the agreement of the two-row wampum, and they followed it, and they would show it as they went through our bush and all those other things, so that they could go on our soil. Free passage is what they were allowed, and that's what we granted them, was free passage. There was people on our soil that they didn't have free passage, and it wasn't such a pleasant journey, for them, because we will protect the peace at all costs, even war.
So that was in the early 1700s that this is when you entered into that treaty with the Silver Covenant chain in
1677.
1677.
Again, it's been several times, but the first time was 1677. It was in 1701. It was in 1710. It was in 1712. It was in 1724. It was in 1748. It was in 1794. And. It always has been. There's never been an absence of us introducing it to the other governments.
Right. And
ever. have we not introduced them? Right up to present in 1968 and 1976, we had a commission of people go to the United Nations. In 1923, Descartes made the same challenge of jurisdiction that I am currently making, and he was never let back in the country. He was the last person to do what I'm doing. It's about jurisdiction. It's about them having authority over us, jurisdiction.
So let's get into that. What is it that you're doing? Because I didn't set that up at the beginning, so people don't know what you're talking about with regards
so when you go into a court, they ask you, are you guilty or not guilty? And they compel you to an answer. And I refuse that plead. I say, show me how you have the jurisdiction to ask me that question. Show me how you are the people that govern me on this land and can charge me with something. And I'm bringing my clan mothers into the court. All three of them are coming into the courtroom. The bear, the turtle, and the wolf will be in court with me on the last time I go. I've been in court 13 times. They asked me for time and time and time to research what I'm telling them. And I have been telling them all along, they have no authority over me. I'm not disrespecting them. I respect their rule of law. I respect what they're doing and everything else. But I am the citizen of another nation with a responsibility to not let it be bastardized, to keep it pure. And when I see it being bastardized, I have a responsibility to set it straight. It's in the law that I pledged allegiance to. So when they charged me, they charged me with 4 criminal charges and 4 traffic charges during COVID. They charged me with speeding. That was their justification for pulling me over. I was on cruise control doing 45 kilometers an hour in a 60 zone behind them. I was behind them for 2 or 3 kilometers from the traffic light to the band office. At which time, at the side road, they pulled over and then they went behind me and then they put their siren on. When they stopped me, they came to the car. Now, number 1A, citizens' right of the Geneva Convention, when a foreign military that is armed confronts you, you have the right to call your ambassador. And that's what I asked for. I asked for my war chief. I said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to call my war chief. They said, I want your driver's license and insurance. I said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to call my war chief. He said, get out of the car. I said, that's not happening. Call my war chief. And he punched me in the head so hard that I was at the hospital. I had concussion and whiplash, which I'm still suffering from. At that point, I rolled up my window and I left. Put my car in drive and I left. And I went to the war chief, the one I was asking for. And I parked my car and I waited for them. And then they came and they stole the plates off my car and they started yelling and screaming. And I went inside and I was in shock. I am not proud of the 8 minutes that landed on Facebook with me screaming and yelling at the police. I kept saying, what did I ask you to do? I asked you to call my war chief, and here we are. What did I ask you? And he's going, Mr. Fisher, you're under arrest. And I said, no, I'm not. You're not in Canada. And that's where we're at. That's where we're at now. The police officer was suspended from his job pending the trial. He admitted to the chief, and this is on video or on audio. I mean, he admitted to the chief that to the chief of police, another Canadian government entity on our territory, Tyndonega OPP, and I have the Crown's words saying the such thing. He said to the chief said, did you assault Mr. Fisher? Did you punch him in the head? He said, yes, I did. He said, why did you do that? He said, he pissed me off. Not he dragged me by his car, not all the things he charged me with, but he pissed me off was his words, because I asked for something. And he said to me the second time, he said, oh yeah, you're sovereign, you're lawless, get out of the car. Right? The third time he said, get out of the fucking car. Those are the words that the police officer used with me. Very violent, very aggressive. And all I did was hands on the steering wheel, say, you need to call my war chief. Just like that, in that tone. after they assaulted me, and what they're going to charge, what they're going to use in court, they said, was 8 minutes of video on Facebook where I'm screaming and yelling at the police, saying, "What did I ask you for when I was inside?" They weren't allowed to come inside the war chief's house because a police officer can't enter your house without a warrant, without permission. And so I stood in the house, and he tried to call me out, tried to call me for a fight. He called me to fight him at one point, and I just stood there. But those are my 8 minutes I'm not proud of. That's not me. That's not my personality. And I'm not proud of that tape. But that's what they're using in the court as my personality. So I have many people that are going to say, that's not me. That's not my personality. I can have their employees. I can have their employees in corrections tell them that. I have lots of them.
Right, because you spent 18 years or something.
Yes, but I'm not pleading in their court, so it doesn't matter. They're not going to be able to use that as evidence because there's going to be no pleading in their courts. I will go to the world court before I make a plead in their court or before I accept. They've already tried to have the judge plead for me, and I told them, go ahead, do that, and I will become a political prisoner of war in that moment, and I will verbalize that into the court record.
So,
they backed off.
That you've entered in. So we're going to back up because you've already said this, but after that moment, you received documents to appear in court, and you've appeared multiple times. You said, I think you said 8 times, or
13.
No, 13 times. And and up until recently, you've been asking them for documentation to prove that they have jurisdiction over you, and they've not been able to provide that. And I believe they've said that they are not going to be able to provide that most recently. Is that correct?
Well, I'm afraid to go to the document to read it right out to you because I'm on my phone and I don't want to lose this connection. So I lost it the last time I tried to read something.
You want me to read it? Because I have uploaded it.
Yes, you can read it for me because I'm afraid to go off here and lose my connection.
Okay, give me a moment and I will just pull that up. Okay. So,
and out that's for electricity. This one here.
So it says, I'm going to read it from my phone actually because it's sideways. But just one moment. And you just received this letter most recently after the 13 appearances in which you've...
Yes, this one came to me on June 23rd, I believe it was, that after I had gone into the courtroom for the umpteenth time.
Right.
June 23rd, 2022.
And it says, please... Wait, let me just see. I need to switch. It's sideways for some reason.
You just need to read the part that talks about the documentation that they have and they're going to use against me in the paragraph under that. And that says, furthermore, or whatever it says. Okay. We do not, yeah.
So I just had to switch it around. So it says, okay. The video. Finally, the Crown's, okay. So please also note that there was no radar device used. Neither of the police officers are equipped with cameras. Finally, the Crown's office is not in possession of the document you requested with the description where all the owners of Treaty 3.5 voted in favor of foreign governments, in brackets Canada, involvement in our sovereign private property known as Treaty 3.5, found inside of our sovereign state known as the Nanfan Treaty.
So they've admitted that they're not in possession of the document that gives them jurisdiction to do what they're doing.
Right.
They said that there was no radar device. Those were the things I asked from disclosure. So they said there was no radar device because they said I was speeding. That was the reason they pulled me over. I lost you again.
Okay. Okay, so I was trying to share my screen and it's not working, and it looks like Robert has left the building, and I don't think he can get back in. So he's calling me. I'm going to end the broadcast and we'll restart it if he's able to come back on. Okay, thanks a lot.